We are live. What's up, fight nerds and dirty gamblers? I am Erik, and this is Erik Bets Fights. It's good to see you all again. I'm not actually seeing you because we're on the internet here, but it's good to be back. I haven't been doing a lot of videos lately. I've had a few viewers reaching out to me on Twitter, like a few folks who watch my videos and follow me on Twitter and stuff, who've been sending me messages and being like, "Hey, man, you haven't been putting out a lot of videos lately," and like. It's awesome that there are folks out there who enjoy my content and notice when I'm gone, and I appreciate those of you who've been reaching out and that sort of thing. But I'm totally fine. If you are a new viewer, if you're just finding me for the first time and you're just here for fight breakdowns, you're going to want to skip this part. I will put timestamps down in the bottom so you know when this part's over. But I'm just going to kind of address some personal things quickly for people who've been longtime viewers of my channel. Essentially what's happening, if you've watched me for a long time, you've heard me talk about how I'm always kind of struggling to keep up with getting my content out. And, I have a full-time job. I have a family. I have responsibilities I need to take care of around the house, just like everybody else. And, this content creation thing, it's not something that I get paid for or anything like that. It's just, it's just a hobby. But I have a tendency to get really obsessed with things. I mean, I've been obsessed with mixed martial arts pretty much my whole life. I tend to get really hyper-focused and dive really deep into things. And this has been no exception. When I started doing this, like a few months into beginning content creation, I found myself, all of a sudden I was posting I'm spending all day Sunday and all day Monday. I mean, literally all day doing tape study. And then I'm cleaning up and editing and publishing my tape study notes on Monday night, and then putting out my trivia video on Tuesday night, and then putting out my full card breakdown on Wednesday, and then doing big money bets on Thursday. And then somewhere in there, I'm like maybe doing a guest spot on somebody else's show. And then also for a while there, I haven't been doing this one anymore lately, but for a while there, then I was also doing the Saturday show on DFS by the Numbers. And so it was one of those things where I dove in too deep, like trying to do 3, 4, 5 shows a week while still, taking out the garbage and just doing the crap I need to do and spending time with my wife and whatever, it was getting to be a lot. So it turned into one of those things where I had to just kind of step back a little bit and take a look at it like, okay, this is supposed to be just a hobby, and it's basically turning into another part-time job that I don't get paid for. So I have to figure out how to balance it all out, so that's essentially what I'm trying to do. And so part of that has been just not doing as many shows a week. And part of that has also been another thing. If you've watched me for a long time, you realize I always talk about how I have a terrible memory and how I have to, I have to put in twice as much work as other people because my memory is so terrible. So not only do I do all that tape study, I take a lot of times my notes for a UFC card will run anywhere from 20 to 30 pages. So I'll have more than a page on every single fight. And so then when I go in to do my breakdown video, if I'm just looking at that big block of text, like basically if I don't have my notes in front of me, I have a really hard time remembering my talking points and what I was going to talk about in my video. And so if I just have a big block of text in front of me, it's really hard for me to figure out which things I want to say from that block of text. So in addition to typing out all of my notes, before I do my video, I also go through and read through all my notes and type up bulleted talking points for each fight. Yeah, those of you who are content creators who don't do this, yeah, it's like it's a ton of work for me to do this the way that I have been doing it. And so I'm trying to find ways to cut corners that are going to work for me, So usually when I do my full card breakdown, I go for like an hour to an hour and a half. And I was watching on off weeks, I spend more time consuming content, watching other people's videos. And I've noticed that there's, a lot of people do the long form breakdowns like that, like an hour and a half, something like that. But there's a lot of people who do shorter ones too. And so, I've experimented with that a little bit, but I'm kind of going to be experimenting with that some more. And I always over-explain everything. I apologize. But so what I'm going to do today, I decided that one way I can save myself some time is by not going through my notes and typing up those talking points, because when you've got 13, 14 fights, that takes a long time. And then when I have the talking points, I want to get to all of them. So then my video gets longer, which takes up more time, and on and on. So anyway, I'm going to try an experiment today. It might be kind of funny because, like I've always said, I have a terrible long-term memory. You can ask me questions about stuff that happened at UFC 2 and UFC 6 and UFC 12, and I can tell you all about that. But if you ask me questions about the fights I watched yesterday or the tape study I did 2 days ago, I'll have a hard time remembering that without my notes. It's just how my brain works. But anyway, I'm going to attempt to do my full card breakdown today without my notes. I have my notes on the screen, but I don't have them typed into talking points, and I'm going to try to avoid using them as much as possible. So we'll see how this goes. I don't know. But anyway, thank you for all of you who are here watching. I appreciate those of you who've supported me and continue to do so. This is going to be my full card breakdown for UFC Vegas 61, headlined by Mackenzie Dern versus Xiaonan. We're going to actually get into the breakdowns now. But first, let's take a look at, we're going to do this real quick, but let's take a look at how I did on the last UFC card. I had some bets on Bellator and Contender Series and stuff, but we're not going to get into that right now. Let's take a look at how, so the last card was, what was it? UFC Vegas 60, Sandhagen versus Song. I had a bunch of bets, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but if we look at my straight bets here, did really well there. Sandhagen ended up being at a better price than this later. I got him early. Anyway, I got Sandhagen at minus 205, won a unit there. I got RoboCop at minus 115, won a unit there. He ended up being an underdog. I could have gotten a better price there too, but I had already bet him earlier. Went with Andre Feely at coin flip odds, won a unit there. And I even took the big underdog shot on Trey Ogden at plus 310, 0.8 units. The only reason I didn't go a full unit there is I decided I wanted to do 1 unit total on Ogden, and I split it up with 0.8 on his money line and then 0.2 on him to win by decision, which he did win by decision. Also took a shot on Cameron Van Camp as an underdog. He did not come through there, but I'd had a bunch of props. To save time, we won't go through all of them, but let's look at the ones that won. Amadovsky versus Pfeiffer, under a round and a half. So we picked up a little over half a unit there. Had some losing spots here. Did a parlay of Hernandez to win and Agapova Robertson to go under 2.5. That one hit. Sandhagen and Pfeiffer in a parlay. That one hit. Sandhagen Yadong under 4.5. Mota Van Camp under 2.5. And then, like I said, that one Ogden by decision plus 550 at 0.2. So anyway, we ended up at 5.83 units at 38%. Like I said, we also won on Contender Series a couple of weeks ago, lost some on Bellator, and then picked up a small win on Contender Series this week. Anyway, we'll get to that later. But so this is the graph. This is how it's been looking. I was up, and now it's literally been a lot of sideways for a long time. We picked up a couple wins here, but anyway, we're not losing, so that's good. But overall, sitting at 67.25 units of profit at 11% ROI. Am I super happy with those results? No, but hey, we're winning, and so that's good. We're happy about that. Cool. So we're going to go through each fight. My breakdowns are going to be pretty brief this time. I'm not going to get in deep where I go an hour and a half, like I said, and then we'll come back and take a look at the bets that I have as well. If you're still watching, take a moment right now. If you would, please go ahead and like this video. Go ahead and subscribe to Erik Bets Fights on YouTube if you haven't. You might be seeing this on the Never Hedge Media channel. Make sure you subscribe to Never Hedge Media as well. I do work for my own channel and for Never Hedge Media, so you could be seeing this either spot. If you want more detail, since I'm not going to be going into a ton of detail, if you want more detail on my thoughts on these fights, if you look in the description below this video, there's links to my Twitter and my Instagram and things like that, but there's also a link to the Never Hedge Media newsletter. It's a Substack newsletter. It's free to subscribe, and if you subscribe, you'll get sent to your email automatically. You'll get tape study notes, betting slates for UFC cards. Kyle, who is the mastermind behind Never Hedge, he posts tape study notes and betting slates for Bellator, PFL, Contender Series. I only do UFC, but you'll get my tape study notes on there, so you can kind of supplement the information I talk about here by going and reading that if you want to. But yeah, go ahead and subscribe to that. It's super cool and it's free. All right, first fight of the night. I hope I've got these in the right order. I've reordered my notes on this several times now. I think I've got them in the right order now, but anyway, first fight of the night, if I'm not mistaken anyway, is going to be Randy Costa versus Guido Cannetti. It's kind of an interesting fight. Like if we look at the tangible differences in this fight, if we Yanni the Greek it, so to speak, without doing the tape, all of the advantages are on Randy Costa's side, right? Randy Costa is, 14 years younger, 3 inches taller, with a 5-inch reach advantage. If we just look at those things, we can see why he's a minus 300 favorite here, right? The thing about Randy Costa, though, is he's very, very dangerous early, but he gasses out and falls off and becomes much less dangerous. So he's a guy who's going to come out and try to get that round one finish, and he often does get that round one finish, but if he doesn't, we see him fall apart pretty badly. Guido Cannetti is 42 years old, almost 43 years old. He's kind of a limited fighter, doesn't have a super well-rounded skill set. He just, he hits hard. He looks for that big shot to take you out. Because he's going to be at such a size disadvantage here and age disadvantage here, I do think that there's a good chance that Randy Costa comes out aggressively. And another thing with Guido Cannetti is he will kind of back up and circle near the cage. He will allow an aggressive fighter to get the better of him, to get the jump on him. So I think Randy Costa finding the round one knockout is pretty likely here. However, I think this is a good live betting spot, because if Randy Costa doesn't find that round one knockout, we could see, that it becomes, as if we get past round one, as the seconds tick off the clock, it becomes more and more likely that Guido Cannetti wins, in my opinion, because we do see Randy Costa start to slow down. So I personally would not parlay Randy Costa at minus 300. I don't think he's really safe at that number, even though he should get the win here. This is a situation where there is a clear path to victory for Guido Cannetti if we see the fight go past the first round and Randy Costa start to fade. So I don't mind potentially taking a shot on Randy Costa, in round one, Randy Costa by KO, something like that. Find a prop if you want to make that minus 300 a little bit more palatable. But personally, I'm going to stay away for now, and I'm going to keep an eye on the live line if we get past round one, because I think you might be able to get an even better line on Guido Cannetti if, moving into round two, if we get that far. Next fight up, we've got Julia Stoliarenko versus Chelsea Chandler. I did the tape on Chelsea Chandler. I was not familiar with her at all. When I started the tape, I wasn't particularly impressed. And then after making my reads, I was like, you know what? I need to go back and do more tapes. So I did. She's only got 5 fights. Yeah, she's 4-1. And after going back and doing more tape, I was a little more impressed with her. So I'm glad I did that. She's big. She usually fights at 145. This fight is at a catch weight of 140, I believe. She's aggressive. Her striking doesn't look particularly technical to me, but she's aggressive with her striking, and she's powerful. She can land and get knockdowns and get fighters out of there. Also, but she tends to just use her striking to close distance, to get in, to clinch up. She works well in the clinch. She's one of those fighters who will just kind of make you wear her weight against the cage, and then ultimately she'll be looking for the takedown. And she does have pretty good top control. She's tight on top. She's heavy on top. She'll move to side control. She'll drop elbows and punches. She'll move to mount. So, she does have a pretty serviceable game on the ground, and a pretty serviceable game overall, I would say, but not necessarily an overly impressive game. So this fight currently sits at pretty much coin flip odds, which I think is interesting. Oh, it's Julia Stoliarenko. I mean, you've probably seen her. You probably kind of know what she's all about. When she first came into the UFC, it was kind of in vogue to kind of talk crap about Julia Stoliarenko, about how she wasn't very good and all she's got is an armbar. And, in her more recent performances, we saw that there is a little bit more to her than that. And we also saw how dangerous that armbar can actually be in her. Her last fight was Jessica Rose Clark, I think, where she won by armbar. And then the fight before that, I forget who it was. It'll tell me right here. Oh, wait. Jessica Rose Clark, Alexis Davis. That's what I thought it was. Yeah, she lost that fight. It was by decision, right? Yeah. But she looked pretty decent there. We got to see her work on the feet a little bit. And I think, she's much like Chelsea Chandler, not necessarily a super technical striker, but she can hold her own there, and she can be aggressive, and she hits hard. So I think the fight could be reasonably close on the feet. I think Chelsea Chandler is going to look to clinch up. That's what she always does in every fight that I watch. She's looking to clinch up and get you to the ground and work from top. The problem is, working from top position puts Julia Stoliarenko working off of her back, where she can look for arm bars, and which she's excellent at. She has something like 11 finishes by armbar or something like that. And that's counting. So if we look at her record here, she's 10-6-1, but she's got actually something like 25 fights total if you count in combat sports. She's got, fights, bouts, matches, whatever you want to call them, because she's also competed in kickboxing. She's competed in lethwei. She's competed in custom rules MMA matches of some kind, and I think probably some grappling matches too. But yeah, she's got like 11 wins by armbar. And so what stands out to me here with this fight being at even odds, and I haven't placed a bet on this fight yet, but I've come close, is that we're looking at even odds for a fighter who, Chelsea Chandler, being 4-1. She has only 5 fights. She didn't have an amateur career, and she didn't make her pro debut, which was also her MMA debut, until 2018. She's been fighting for less than 4 years and has only 5 fights total. Julia Stoliarenko has 17 MMA fights and like more than 25 total fights between lethwei and kickboxing and whatnot. She's the much more experienced fighter, the much more proven fighter. And we know she always has a path to victory with the arm bar. And I think that skill for skill, they stack up pretty evenly. So, usually it's like tape is king with capping for me and for most cappers. You watch the tape, you go off what you see on the tape. But then, people also watch the weigh-ins, look at the Instagram, who was somebody training with, how did their weight cut go? You got to take all of those things into account too. And this is a situation where after doing the tape, I consider them reasonably even, and I see why the line is where it is. But the experience gap is so massive in this fight, and this is a spot where I do think you have to take that into account. How much, I don't know. But for me personally, the experience gap feels like enough that when we're looking at even odds that I can lean Stoliarenko, that it can tip me that way because she's fought in the UFC a handful of times, has literally 5 times as many fights, has been in the game much longer. So even though I haven't bet Julia Stoliarenko yet, I take that back. I did bet on her. I bet on her sub prop. We'll take a look at the bets. I just placed that bet a little while ago, so I forgot. I put a little bit on Julia Stoliarenko by sub and a little bit on Julia Stoliarenko by sub in round 1. And I said I was going to not talk so long on these fights, and I'm doing it anyway. But hey, I'm doing it without my notes. So go me. Next up, we've got Maxime Grishin versus Philippe Lins at 205. Maxime Grishin, slight favorite at -170. Comeback on Philippe Lins is about +145. So these guys are both getting up there in years a little bit. Maxime Grishin, 38, Philippe Lins, 37. I think, the odds make sense to me with Maxime Grishin being, I think Maxime Grishin could maybe even be favored a little bit more than this. Philippe Lins is a guy he's dangerous, but he's not particularly technically skilled, in my opinion. He's a guy who kind of relies on aggression and power a little bit more than technicality. He's a guy who comes out hard in round 1 looking for the finish, kind of like what I said about Randy Costa. Comes out hard in round 1 looking for the finish, but if he doesn't find it, he will tend to fade and slow down. Maxime Grishin is a guy who's much more technical, keeps a more buttoned up, tighter game. He's good at striking from range. He's good at staying patient and picking his spots. He's good at, he's not necessarily cranking it up and looking for the finish. He'll just stay patient, create openings, counter, pick his spots, that kind of thing. And so, Philippe Lins is going to be dangerous early. I think Maxime Grishin will be able to weather that storm and will be able to take over as Philippe Lins slows down. So I like Maxime Grishin to either win by decision here or potentially even find a late stoppage. Maybe as we get into round 3, if Philippe Lins is slowing down considerably, Maxime Grishin might be able to find that finish. So I did bet Maxime Grishin here. There we go. That was a quicker breakdown. That's more like what I'm looking to do. Let's move on to Brendan Allen versus Krzysztof Jotko. I think this is a cool fight. I think this fight should be fun. Without getting into too much detail, this is almost like a little bit of a mirror match to me. And if we look at the odds, -105, -115, again, it's another coin flip fight, which makes perfect sense to me. Both of these guys are pretty well-rounded, pretty good everywhere. They're decent strikers. They're decent wrestlers. They're decent grapplers. Where I think the differences lie here. So this is a situation where, when I think their skill sets, not that they're exactly the same fighter or anything, but I think the levels of their skill sets are pretty comparable. So it becomes a situation where I'm going to trust the guy that I think has better fight IQ and makes better in-cage decisions, and the guy who has the wrestling upside. And to me, that's Krzysztof Jotko. On the feet, I think it could be pretty close. I'm trying to remember now. consult my notes here. I had some concerns about volume on the feet, but now I can't remember. Just one second. Where I think Jotko has the higher volume. Okay, looking to the stats, Allen and Jotko put out a similar volume of strikes. Okay, so they're almost the same with their striking offense. Oh, Allen lands about 1 more significant strike per minute, but he also absorbs 2 more significant strikes per minute. Okay. And then another thing I was looking at was their takedown stats. Allen is at only 50% takedown defense, with Jotko at 83% takedown defense. So yeah, that was kind of where my big concern came in, is that I think Jotko can take Brendan Allen down if he chooses to. And Brendan Allen is dangerous on the ground, but less dangerous off of his back than on top, right? So I agree with this fight being lined evenly. If I was going to bet it, and I haven't, I might still bet Krzysztof Jotko. I haven't decided for sure, but I do think that, like I said, when I feel like their skill sets are fairly even, but one guy I think has the wrestling upside and can be trusted to make better in-cage decisions, to me it makes sense to lean that way. So I'm going to pick Krzysztof Jotko probably by decision here, and I don't mind a bet on him, but haven't placed one yet. Next up, we've got Joaquim Silva versus Jesse Ronson. You guys know that I'm always going to be honest with you when I don't really have a read on a fighter or a fight, and this is one of those situations. I just don't have a strong read on this fight really at all. Joaquim Silva does not fight very often. He reminds me a little bit of Vitor Belfort, and I love Vitor. So like Joaquim Silva is a guy who's, he's got a BJJ black belt. We always hear about how he's dangerous on the ground, but he never uses it. Instead, he just loves to march forward, throwing reverse punches. So it reminds me of Vitor, because, we would always hear about how Vitor was dangerous on the ground. And then, but rather than ever really using his ground game, although, he did just about have John Jones in that arm bar that one time. That was like the only time I could really remember his ground game actually looking dangerous. But when I think of Vitor, I always think of his finish of Vanderlei Silva, where he was just marching forward and throwing punches and marched him all the way to the cage and finished him. That's kind of who Joaquim Silva is. He'll kind of hang out and pick his spots, and then he'll just explode forward with like a 2 or 3 or 4 punch combo. I think Jesse Ronson is the more well-rounded fighter of the two. But I also think that Jesse Ronson is, I shouldn't say that he's necessarily more well-rounded. He's more willing to be well-rounded. Joaquim Silva probably has, the better ground game, but he doesn't really look to use it. Jesse Ronson's a guy who seems a little more comfortable actually using all the different facets of mixed martial arts. But I also think Jesse Ronson is, and not to talk smack on him, but he's a gatekeeper. He's a journeyman. He's got a reasonably well-rounded skill set, but I don't think he's got a particularly high level skill set. And, this fight is also lined pretty closely. If I was going to bet it, I would bet Jesse Ronson as an underdog, but I would want to get him a little closer to like plus 150 or something like that. That's all I'm going to say about that fight. Like I said, I don't have a real strong read on it. Not much to say on that one. Next up, we've got Jessica Penne versus Tabitha Ricci, Baby Shark. I love me some Tabitha Ricci. I think y'all know that. Tabitha Ricci minus 220, Jessica Penne plus 180. I bet Tabitha Ricci early on. I got her at minus 163. This is actually one of those situations. I don't do this that often, but I've been doing it more. When I look at a line really early on, weeks or months before the fight takes place, and I believe that line is going to swell and give me an opportunity to hedge out if I want to, I'll bet it without doing any research. And when I saw Tabitha Ricci at minus 163, I was like, that seems like good value to me, and I think she's probably going to end up being a much bigger favorite than that. So I did bet her at that number, and look, hey, I was right. Now you can get Jessica Penne. Actually, I think she's out there for even like 185, plus 190. So I have the option to hedge out. I'm not going to take it because I do think Tabitha Ricci probably wins this fight. The only real concerns are that Jessica Penne is quite a bit bigger. She's 4 inches taller, has 5 inches of reach. But the thing is, Tabitha Ricci's accustomed to that. She's only 5'1". She's pretty heavily muscled. She's almost always going to be fighting at a height and reach and just overall size disadvantage. But I don't think she's going to be at a physicality disadvantage. Like Tabitha Ricci, she strikes aggressively, oftentimes to close distance, where she is a solid wrestler, and she's also a solid enough BJJ artist that she can keep herself safe, I think. So I do think she's probably going to be able to get takedowns on Jessica Penne here. Jessica Penne does have a dangerous game off of her back, but I think Tabitha Ricci will be able to keep herself safe. And I lean toward thinking we see Ricci fight her way to a 15-minute wrestling-based decision, but I also wouldn't be terribly surprised if she ends up in a position where she's able to land some ground and pound and get a stoppage. Also, we've got the 12 years here. Jessica Penne, she's 39 years old, almost 40 years old. I think we could see Jessica Penne retire after this fight or pretty soon. So, I do like Tabitha Ricci to win that one. Next up, Alexei Oleinik versus Ilir Latifi. I feel like this fight, I didn't do tape on this fight this time because I've done tape. I think this fight has already been booked a couple times before. I just grabbed my notes that I had before. I was like, I've already done the tape on this fight. So anyway, Ilir Latifi minus 175, Alexei Oleinik plus 145. You can even get him for a little bit better than that. This is one of those fights. First of all, we need to say Alexei Oleinik is 45 years old, oldest fighter on the roster. Ilir Latifi's 39, which is fairly old as well, but not when you're up against a guy who's 45. There's a size difference here. Ilir Latifi's always going to be working at a size disadvantage. Excuse me, at heavyweight, much like Tabitha Ricci. So Ilir Latifi, typically has been a light heavyweight. Not even, he's small for light heavyweight even. He's only 5'10", but he's a big, thick dude, coming in at 240 pounds. Alexei Oleinik, on the other hand, is 6'2", 244. I've heard people saying like, okay, in this fight, Alexei Oleinik is the true heavyweight. Alexei Oleinik used to fight at middleweight. He's not a small guy, 6'2", but that 244 pounds is largely just because he's not a fat guy by any means, but he carries a little extra fat on him. It's not like he's super ripped or anything. I mean, he's a guy who could, now that he's 45, why would he want to cut the weight? But, as far as his physical makeup, as far as his physique, he does have a physique that would allow him to fight at middleweight or light heavyweight, or at least could have when he was younger. But anyway, this is for me, this is an interesting fight. I'm excited about this fight. It could be really ugly, but it should be fun. But I really struggle with sort of trying to picture how this fight is going to play out, because with most fights, you can at least have a pretty good idea what you think someone is going to try to do. In this fight, I feel like I don't know, these guys are both, more so grapplers, Ilir Latifi being a wrestler, Alexei Oleinik being a super dangerous submission artist. But sometimes we see a fight like that turn into an ugly kickboxing match. And I think that we could see that happen here. I think we could see both guys going for takedowns at different times and maybe not having much success with finding them. And then, we end up seeing some ugly striking going on. It's hard to say. Or, will Latifi go for takedowns and get them? Will Alexei Oleinik go for takedowns and get them? I just don't know. I have a hard time seeing how this fight will play out. However, because, Ilir Latifi, you'd have to say that he's the better technical striker of the two, but he doesn't throw. He doesn't throw anything. I mean, his volume is extremely low. Alexei Oleinik is not a great technical boxer. His striking is ugly. It's not very technical, but it's effective. He throws big overhands. If he connects, he can hurt you. I mean, he does have some power. So on the feet, I think it could be fairly close. If it goes to the ground, Latifi's the better wrestler, but Oleinik is always dangerous on the ground from a variety of positions, whether he's on the bottom, whether he's on top. I mean, he can find submissions, even standing, clinching up with him. He can go for that. He can go for that Ezekiel choke standing. He's a guy who can be very dangerous in a lot of different ways and from a lot of different angles. So I ended up putting a bet on Alexei Oleinik here. I think I got him at like plus 158. I was also going to put a little something on his sub prop, which I don't know if that's dropped yet. I'll have to take a look because I forgot that I was going to look at that. But anyway, yeah, I don't have a super strong read here, but I decided that I see this fight as potentially playing out closely enough that Oleinik at plus 158 was worth a shot to me. And another reason I was going to try to get through this quickly is, usually I do these videos in the evening. I am smack dab in the middle of my work day, and I had to get it done now because I'm traveling later today, and my boss just messaged me, so I gotta hurry up. I'm technically working right now, so I gotta hurry up and get this done. So we're gonna speed it up. Next up, we've got Mike Davis versus Vyacheslav Borshev, Slava Claus. Mike Davis favored at -175, Slava at +150. The quick and dirty breakdown here is that both of these guys are good strikers, dangerous strikers, but Mike Davis has the wrestling upside. Do we know if he's going to use the wrestling? No, but we've seen that that's a very clear path to beating Slava. Mark Diakisi showed it. Mark Diakisi is normally a striker, but he came out with the singlet on and just wrestled via Slava Claus the entire time, and we saw that worked splendidly. And Mike Davis he's a good striker, but he's a smart fighter. Is he a guy I 100% trust to have the right game plan? No, but I think there's a good shot that he's going to know that wrestling is his way to win this fight. I did put a bet on Mike Davis. I think I got him at like -160. I don't remember the line for sure, but we will take a look at the end here. But Slava, definitely dangerous on the feet. He's got KO power. Mike Davis, not as much of a one-shot KO threat, but he can certainly hold his own on the feet, and then he's got the wrestling to fall back on if he chooses to. Next up, John Castaneda versus Daniel Willie Cat Santos. We've got Castaneda -220, pretty big favorite now, and Willie Cat +180. I think I put Castaneda in a parlay. Basic breakdown for these guys. Daniel Santos is he's a shoot-a-box fighter, and you can totally tell he's a shoot-a-box fighter. He reminds me of the old school Vanderlei Silva type style. He's got a very a Muay Thai style. Very aggressive, very, flashy at times. He likes to do spinning attacks and that sort of thing, but he's very, very aggressive. From the moment the horn sounds, he is in your face looking to finish you. He's not a guy who's looking to touch you up like a Diaz brother. He's not looking to beat you by decision. He's looking to knock you out and get you out of there, and he will be looking for that knockout for all 15 minutes. That's the way he fights. John Castaneda has a little bit more of a well-rounded game, I think, than Daniel Santos, and just a little bit higher fight IQ, a little bit more of a finesse type game. He's a guy who's Santos kind of only has one mode. It's kind of just forward, punch, 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 kick, kick, kick. Whereas Castaneda is a little more able to set traps, to be evasive, that kind of thing. So the way I see this fight playing out, Santos is going to be dangerous the entire time. Santos, if I was going to bet Santos, I would bet his KO prop, which last I looked was at like +450. Santos finding a KO is not out of the question here. But one thing we've seen from Castaneda is he can use his movement really well. He can be very evasive and find his counters. And in Daniel Santos's UFC debut against Julio Arce, that's what we saw, was Arce just being the slicker veteran and using that veteranship and that finesse that he has to stay moving, to be a moving target. So Santos wasn't able to land the big shots, to set traps, create openings, and counter when the opportunities were there. And I think Castaneda can do the same thing. Simple breakdown, but we'll leave it at that. Next up, we've got Sodiq Yussuf versus Don Shainis. The line here, okay, it says -900 for Yussuf and +600 for Shainis. A lot of times the lines are a little bit off on this. Actually, I've got fightodds.io pulled up. I know that you can get Shainis for, if this loads for me, I know you can get Shainis for as high as +750. It might even be better than that. Where are you? Right there. Okay, +750. And Yussuf is out there -1100, -1200. It makes sense, okay, that Yussuf is maybe not that big. It makes sense that Yussuf is a big favorite. This might be a bit much, but Sodiq Yussuf is the much better fighter, the much more experienced fighter, the much more well-rounded fighter. I watched the tape on Shainis, and he's one of those guys who his skill set doesn't really impress me, but he's dangerous, okay? He's a fighter that his striking is not very technical. He's really wild on the feet. He kind of just throws big wild hooks and largely uses his striking to get into range. His takedowns are decent. His top game is decent. In the fights that I watched, which was against very low level competition, he's able to pass guard, to get to side control. He's able to get to mount. I mean, his top game and passing between positions looks good against low-level competition, but, you know, he's making a huge step up in competition here, which, you know, the line is reflecting that. However, so yeah, Sodiq Yussuf should win this fight. He is the better fighter. But this is a situation, you know, I do my best work as far as straight bets. I do my best work on big underdogs. If you look at my BetMMA.tips track record, I'm hitting big underdogs at I think 38% of the time for like 48% ROI. So that's really where I have made the most money, is betting big underdogs. And sometimes it's not even based on a particular read that like, oh, I think this guy has a good shot of winning. Sometimes it's just a numbers game. You know, at plus 750, it would be one thing if it was a guy, you know, if it was an underdog at plus 750 who just really didn't have any path to victory. Yeah, I wouldn't touch that. But the thing is, Don Shainis is an aggressive striker who has knockout power. And he's also a solid wrestler who has a solid top game. You know, he makes a lot of mistakes. He's not super technical, but he has ways to win this fight. I haven't bet him yet, and I'm not entirely sure if I will, but at that plus 750, I might. You know, those are the kind of the spots that I do take a shot on sometimes, especially when there is a path to victory for the big underdog. I would not touch Sodiq Yussuf at this number. You know, you could maybe look at his inside the distance prop or something like that. But if I was going to bet this fight, I would bet Don Shainis just because the numbers are doing the talking for me here. Next up, we've got Raoni Barcelos versus Trevin Jones. This is a fight that for me is largely going to come down to, well, let's look at the odds. Raoni Barcelos minus 225, Trevin Jones plus 190. That might be a little bit wide, but I think the reason that the odds are that way is Raoni Barcelos he puts out a ton more volume on the feet. He's just a guy who stays much more consistent. You know, he's going to be consistently touching you with strikes, but still landing hard. Trevin Jones is a guy that more kind of hangs back and waits for his opportunity to land that big shot. And if he doesn't land that big shot, he's going to get picked apart and lose a decision. So, and if you like Trevin Jones here, I would potentially bet his KO prop. Last I looked, it was at like plus 575 or something like that on Bet Online. So it's probably even at a better number on FanDuel and DraftKings. So not a bad prop there, I think. But I do like Raoni Barcelos to just be the busier fighter here and to land more as long as he's able to avoid, you know, the big KO shot of Trevin Jones. And if it goes to the grappling, I think Barcelos can hold his own there as well. One concern is that Raoni Barcelos is 35 years old. He got out hustled his last time out by Victor Henry, who I think it's because Victor Henry is just better than we thought he was, not necessarily that like, oh, he got outworked and beat by this newcomer. So, you know, maybe there's some concerns that Raoni Barcelos is slowing down and aging a little bit here, but I do think that this is his fight to win. I don't particularly love the number and probably wouldn't bet him anymore at that number, but I do think he probably should win here. Only two fights left, y'all. Randy Brown versus Francisco Trinaldo. Much like the Guido Cannetti versus Randy Costa fight, this is another spot where if we Yanni the Greek it, everything is on Randy Brown's side, right? Randy Brown is a minus 300 favorite, same as Randy Costa was. So there's another part of the comparison. But we've got a guy who's 12 years younger, Randy Brown 32, Massaran Duba 44, 12 years younger, 6 inches taller, 8 inches of reach. Those things alone, without doing the tape, are enough to make a guy a pretty big favorite. You know, he's kind of got everything going for him there. Randy Brown is a guy that he came into the UFC really, really inexperienced, and I didn't think much of him. He was a guy who just kind of had some physical gifts, but, you know, hadn't really developed his game very well yet. And he has developed his game pretty well now. You know, he's a guy he's able to use his length pretty well. He's able to use his movement pretty well on the feet. He strikes well. He can also grapple pretty well. He's become a, you know, pretty well-rounded fighter, and he puts out pretty decent volume, and he's also got decent power as well. Trinaldo, it's tough to know what to do with Trinaldo. Like, we keep expecting him to fall off a cliff at any time, but he keeps putting on pretty solid performances, right? But I think he's a guy that, you know, at this point in time, with everything that's on Randy Brown's side, it makes all the sense in the world to me that Randy Brown is as big a favorite as he is. I think that he's going to be putting out more volume on the feet. He's going to have that huge reach advantage. He's going to have a speed advantage. He's going to be able to land on Trinaldo and just kind of pick him apart. I think Trinaldo might look for takedowns. I think Randy Brown will largely be able to stop those takedowns. And even if it does go to the ground, I think he can keep himself safe there. I think besides the big one-shot power, pretty much everything's on Randy Brown's side here. I did bet Randy Brown by decision because Trinaldo is very, very tough and very, very hard to finish. I have seen some people saying, like, I think this will be the spot where, Trinaldo does get finished. Absolutely could happen because, like I said, he's 44 years old. He could fall off a cliff at any time, but I do like Randy Brown to win here, and I lean on him. I lean toward him to win by decision. And next up, we've got Mackenzie Dern versus Xiaonan. This is our main event of the evening. I'm staying away from this fight from a betting perspective. I don't necessarily have a super strong lean here, but Mackenzie Dern's a huge favorite at minus 230. Xiaonan at plus 190. After doing the tape, I always make notes because usually the props aren't out yet. I make notes on what props I want to take a look at. And one of them was, of course, Mackenzie Dern by submission. And it came out and it was like plus 100. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to mess with that. So I'm just kind of staying away from this. Honestly, if I was going to bet this fight, I'd probably bet Xiaonan at the number that she's at. Just because, if you've paid attention to that thing I'm doing, the She's a Dog project, where I'm betting and tracking, just automatically, blindly betting the women's underdog in every UFC fight, it ends up being a fairly profitable angle over time. So anyway, this is a pretty clear striker versus grappler matchup. I'm not going to say a ton about it. The story on Mackenzie Dern is that she's absolutely venomous on the ground and absolutely horrible at getting the fight to the ground. She literally shows 9% takedown accuracy. She just doesn't have much of a wrestling game. She has a really hard time getting the fight to the ground. However, she's also shown that she doesn't always need to get the fight to the ground. She's more than happy to she has no problem just clinching up. She'll climb you like a tree and climb to your back from standing. She'll grab a Kimura from standing, or she might even do an Imanari roll. You never know. Like she doesn't necessarily need to find a traditional takedown in order to get things into the grappling realm. Xiaonan is definitely the better striker of the two. The thing with Mackenzie Dern, her striking still doesn't look that good. It's clearly improved a lot, but her striking is dangerous because she does not have to worry about how hard she throws. She doesn't have to worry about putting herself off balance, putting herself out of position, because what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to take her down. She doesn't care. She wants you to take her down. Nobody's going to take Mackenzie Dern down anyway. So she knows that she can just throw with reckless abandon. So she is dangerous on the feet because she can just, swing it like a baseball bat. However, if Dern is unable to get Xiaonan to the ground, if she's unable to clinch with her and control her, if the fight ends up playing out largely in open space in the striking, Xiaonan is going to pick Mackenzie Dern apart. So there is certainly a path to victory here. I get why Dern is favored the way she is, because I do think there's a decent chance that she's able to get the fight to the ground at some point and find that sub. But if I was going to bet it, I'd probably take the underdog money on Xiaonan. So that's how I'm looking on that one. Anyway, let's see. We've gone 43 minutes, longer than I intended to. But let's take a look at the bets I've got for this card, and then we'll get out of here. I got quite a few bets already here. Okay, I did bet Castaneda straight up. I couldn't remember if I did or not. I bet Castaneda at minus 185. I bet Mike Davis at minus 165. I did take the underdog shot on Oleinik at plus 158. I put 0.7 units on that because I was going to save 0.3 units for his sub prop, which I probably will be hitting if that is out. Like I said, I bet Tabitha Ricci early on at minus 163. So she's up at like minus 220 now. So beat some line movement there. Maxime Grishin at minus 160. And then for some props and parlays, I bet Brown versus Trinaldo to go over 2.5. I parlayed Castaneda and Wiley Zhang from Future Card. Parlayed Randy Brown and Raoni Barcelos. I did hit that Brown wins by decision, so I'm hoping that he doesn't find that late finish. I got Stoliarenko wins by sub, and Stoliarenko wins by sub in round 1. I'm going to be at my grandma's birthday party on Saturday, so I might be able to kind of watch on my phone a little bit, but I'm probably going to be missing the fights, so I hope you all enjoy them, but I'll try to do some updates on Twitter as I can and that sort of thing. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I am Erik with Erik Bets Fights. You can find me on Twitter at Erik Bets Fights, on Instagram at Erik_Bets_Fights. You can also find me on the Erik Bets Fights YouTube channel or the Never Hedge Media YouTube channel, whichever one that you're watching this on. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and then head over to the other one and like and subscribe as well. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I'm Erik with Erik Bets Fights, reminding you to play it smart, play it tight, and let's grow those bankrolls. Enjoy the fights this weekend at UFC Vegas 61. Take care, everybody.